10 touchdowns for Brian Thomas. I think that was part of his prospect profile that, I mean, he's just a straight up touchdown maker.
Ladd McConkey, who actually led all rookies in first downs per route run. He was awesome. It's a close race, honestly, between BTJ and Ladd McConkey for 1 and 2, I think, overall in the season among rookies. The second honorable mention has to be Malik Neighbors.
Look at the release.
There's your separation.
Great route.
Stutter and go. Gets by clean.
That is unbelievable.
May be the greatest catch I've ever seen.
Let's go to the rookies. Best rookie wide receiver. This was I think a tough list because, man, we had some real rookies break out. The funny thing about this, Matt, is I would say that Marvin Harrison Jr., who was the consensus #1 dude, I don't know if he was better than all these other dudes. Actually, as a matter of fact, I know he was not better than all these other dudes on this list.
No, yeah, he was definitely not better than all these dudes on the list. He is not my #1 player, and I feel pretty good about that.
You should feel super confident in that. Yeah.
Yeah, my #1 best rookie this year, and I do think this was a late push from him, was Brian Thomas Jr., who was obviously incredible this year.
Dude,
he was so good, especially late, man. That was really where I think took this award home. He was just so good down the stretch, and he was, I mean, treated like a real deal #1 wide receiver. And I've talked about this, that it mostly did take a lot of injuries I mean all of the injuries. Yeah. Since in weeks 14 to 17, he was second in target share overall in the league, and he was third in air yards overall in the league, air yard share. Of course, weeks 14 to 17, he did not play with Christian Kirk. He did not play with Gabe Davis, and obviously Evan Ingram even went on IR there. That doesn't take anything away from Brian Thomas Jr. It's just the reality of those conditions. But despite being used that way, he responded by even better and better and better and better play. And I think what makes him such an impressive player, we talked about this a lot, where in the rookie report, he was awesome against press man coverage earlier on in his career. He continued to be awesome against press man coverage. He got better and better and better at separating on underneath routes against zone coverage, which I think also helped him earn more of these targets and these promotions that we saw down the stretch. He was excellent as a rookie. No question about it. Great player. And I think the ceiling on him is definitely a tier 1 receiver in the league. And I think he could maybe graduate to that category by midpoint of next season at the latest.
I mean, you're talking about a guy in Brian Thomas here that saw 133 targets and still was third in the NFL in total receiving yards at 1,282. He added another, I think it was 60 or 70 on the ground as well, but 10 touchdowns for Brian Thomas. I think that was part of his prospect profile that, I mean, he's just a straight up touchdown maker. You know, you get that ball in the end zone around Brian Thomas, and he's one of these guys that just goes up and gets it, which I really, really appreciated about his game. But yeah, obviously he can win downfield. Was a great prospect, obviously downfield. But Matt, can you talk about Brian Thomas here, just in other areas of the field? Because I honestly was really impressed, and I know this is the funny thing, man. Like, reception perception showed this, bro. Like, it showed that he's winning on these slant routes, right? And, like, that is, again, an area where he exploited DBs. It's like, okay, you're going to play me 8 yards off. Let me just go kill you underneath these slants. And I thought that was great, you know, but talk, because I think the thought process among more casual fans who don't know about Brian Thomas is that this guy only wins deep, and I just could not disagree more.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not true. And yeah, if you go back to his prospect profile, 82% success rate on slants, 83% success rate on curls, 85.7% success rate on out routes.
Come on, bro.
Like, there were routes, obviously, he mostly was, his percentage of routes did skew very heavily to like slant, curl, go, but he showed the potential to, win on those at a really high rate. Also, 72% success rate on the 9 route as a prospect that's just... And his size is some mind-boggling stuff. I shout out to NFL Network's Greg Rosenthal when I was on the former Around the NFL podcast over during draft season. He said like his take about the wide receiver class is you could not draft Brian Thomas Jr. high enough. And I mean, there has not been one like you could draft him higher than all these other receivers. That take has aged extremely well for Greg because I think obviously like we're saying we're giving him the best rookie wide receiver award. But I mean, corner routes too. 5% of his routes were corner routes. 64% success rate, really good route success rate chart overall. The thing that I really liked and why I thought he was a clear first round prospect to me was the 83rd percentile success rate versus press. Like the idea that he was, I really warmed up to Brian Thomas as a fantasy asset this season. He was one of my most drafted players. I said I ranked him ahead of Christian Kirk, ahead of Evan Ingram in terms of like overall ranks. He was somebody that I took a lot of, was because I thought he was a little less raw. I thought it might take him a couple years to be the version of the player he is as a rookie, but I didn't think he was going to be like a project that needed to sit on the bench or anything like that.
Yeah.
I am obviously surprised that he's this good right away, no question, and that he was better than like a Dunze and Harrison and Neighbors and all these guys. I'm surprised that it happened this quickly, but that press success rate I think did show like this could be a guy that could get on the field and be like a part of an NFL offense right away. And then what was a good signal in the rookie report was that he was still able to win curl routes and 9 routes and stuff like that at an above average rate, but he did not really run. He ran a decent amount of dig routes in college, but I think that was an area that was weaker for him. And then 18.7% dig route rate, which was his most commonly run route in the rookie report, and 75% success rate is above average. That was where it's like, okay, now we're talking about some real deal development there. That was sort of when we started to get the signals and signs of like, okay, something really special is brewing here. And obviously that did come to fruition by the end of the year.
Honorable mention at the rookie spot.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one, it has to be Ladd McConkey, who actually led all rookies in first downs per route run. He was awesome. I think amazing. Prior to he was right there too with Brian Thomas Jr. in terms of yards per route run overall. He was so good. And until that like final stretch of the season where Brian Thomas Jr. really, I think, edged Ladd out, I would have said that the best rookie on film this year was Ladd McConkey. Now I'd probably give it to Brian Thomas Jr. a little bit ahead. So it's a close race, honestly, between BTJ and Ladd McConkey for 1 and 2, I think, overall in the season among rookies. The second honorable mention has to be Malik Neighbors, who was fantastic and such a dominant press man receiver all season long. He was so good. He's another one of these guys that you can create touches for, which again is not an insult. It's not slander because he's unbelievable on those created touches. Right. So second among rookies, pretty high among rookies, number 3 in yards per route run against man coverage. Neighbors so good against man. My final honorable mention does have to be Marvin Harrison Jr., who had a shaky rookie season, but
up and down.
Still overall very good.
Yeah.
It was a good rookie season. It just wasn't what it was supposed to be, which was generational and blah 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 blah. But also, like, I will just say, this would not be a rookie wide receiver segment, and this would not be, reception perception if I didn't note that, like, when you look at any of these rookies, like guys that ran over 250 plus routes on the season, and you start looking at these efficiency metrics, Jalen Coker pops up every single time. Number 2, all right. Number 2 in yards per route run against man coverage. There's a long play in there that's doing a little bit of heavy lifting, but Dynasty Twitter put Juju Smith-Schuster as the wide receiver 1 overall after like 197 yard play boosted his yards per route run. I can give a vanity freaking mention to Jalen Coker here if I want to, and I do. So he's number 2 against man coverage, yards per route run. But even like if you look at the efficiency metrics too, he's 4th in first downs per route run overall among rookies, behind only Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors. Like, he is up there if we're talking about these efficiency metrics. Is one Jalen Coker? He's definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
I will also say this: you didn't mention Rome Odunze, but I do feel I know statistically he wasn't there this year. Was Rome, but I got to be honest with you, man. Like, I think I saw a lot from Rome that I think Chicago fans should definitely still be very hopeful. I know, again, the numbers weren't there, Matt, but dang, man, like, watching this guy just play, you're like, yeah, okay, this guy belongs. This guy can absolutely play and play a big time role in the NFL. Whatever they do with Keenan Allen this offseason is going to be really interesting. But if they move on from him, man, I think that Odunze has a real opportunity to explode next year.
Yeah, two things on that. One, if you just look at, again, any of these efficiency metrics, Odunze is not going to look good compared to the other rookies, because I tweeted out about Jalen Coker in the second, yards per out run versus man coverage, and Rome Odunze ranks 12 of 18. Side note, number 18 on the list is Mason Tipton of the New Orleans Saints with a cool 0.0 yards per route run against man coverage, which is just a very funny stat. Every time I see it, it's very funny. Anyways, so Rome is 12 of 18, which is pretty low. He's in the Troy Franklin zone. You don't want to be in the Troy Franklin zone. But as I pointed out to people, yeah, the stats don't look pretty on Rome Odunze. Did you watch the Bears offense all year?
Right.
All Bears wide receivers in yards per out run versus man coverage among 119 wide receivers who ran 200 plus routes in the season. Odunze 77th, Keenan Allen's 82nd, and DJ Moore is 90th. And we know that these guys aren't bad. We know DJ Moore and Keenan Allen can play, right? And Odunze has more yards per out run than these guys. And all of them are so low. They're towards the bottom of the 119 wide receivers we're talking about here. And that's what you get when you have, I'm not saying Caleb Williams is a bad quarterback or he will always be bad, but he played poorly this year in a poor environment. And also this room was very crowded, as we've talked about a lot. So that is always going to happen when you look at this stuff. I'm not too concerned about Rome Odunze long-term, because I'm with you. I agree that when you look at him in the rookie report, we saw a lot of positivity there. I'm actually just really interested where he ends up playing long-term, because DJ Moore was mostly the X receiver this offense, and it was a lot of underneath stuff. I'd love to see him moved around the formation and see more of Rome Odunze at X. But Nate Tice's pointed out to me a lot, Rome Odunze, when you watch him from the slot, vertical routes in the slot, doing some power slot stuff, he looks really good at that too. So I don't know. And actually, if you look efficiency metrics wise, he's a lot more efficient and productive from the slot than he is from the outside. So by the way, playing multiple positions is good. He probably should play multiple positions, but that's what I'm interested to see with him, is where he lines up and does most of his damage next season and beyond.
I'd love him to be a more full-time X receiver, to your point. If they move on from Keenan Allen, let DJ Moore kind of be that movable chess piece for them, because that's when he's at his best. Not saying that Rome Odunze needs to play 95 or 100% of his snaps as an outside wide receiver. Obviously, I'm not saying that. I mean, even the great Devontae Adams plays 25 to 30% of his snaps as a slot guy. I don't think anyone's confusing him to be a slot player, right? He's one of the most dominant X receivers of all time, man. And so I think Rome Odunze, I'm not saying he's going to be Devontae Adams here. I'm just saying in terms of role, 75% outside, 25% inside. I think that'd be great, man. Let's get that going, and let's see if Chicago can beef up that offensive line. I mean, again, yards per route run. Well, shoot. I mean, to me, that indicates, okay, you had a quarterback who absolutely would not let it fly down the field, and also a quarterback who was constantly under duress because the O-line could not give him protection, right? So couple of those things, I think, paired together. I think this offseason is going to be huge for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Let's see what they do in this offseason.